Oh, hi, I'm Ron Aaron, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this training session in which my obligation, responsibility, and challenge is to try to help you become a better moderator as you learn to handle the caregiver teleconnection conference calls that will be taking place over the next few months. Now, the good news is you begin with a tremendous amount of knowledge. You're the expert on almost every one of the topics that will be covered. The challenge that we both face is helping you become comfortable as, well, in essence, a talk show host. This is the basic instrument that we'll be using in the caregiver teleconnection conference calls and the important things to remember. And I want to give you some housekeeping tips before we talk to some of the techniques that you might use as a moderator. First of all, try not to use exactly what this is, which is a wireless phone. Many of us, myself included, live in homes, if you're going to do these calls from your house, where there are no hard-wired phones. In your office, there probably are. The one thing we don't want to use are cell phones. If you use a cell phone, while you may think you've got the best reception ever, I can guarantee you, as a guy who's been a radio talk show host for more than 20 years, you're going to hear distortion, noise, and it becomes difficult for people who are on other phones to hear you and understand you. So first rule of thumb, use a hardwired phone. Second thing, you need to be in a quiet place. If you're in an office and you can go to a space where you can close your door, that would be ideal. Thirdly, if you have a dog, Murphy's Law guarantees that the minute you start the conference call, that dog will start barking or jump in your lap or try to distract you. Dogs are very perceptive. If they know you're not paying attention to them, just like a 2-year-old, what do they want? They want your attention. So put the dog in another room. If the dog barks when you put him in another room, then maybe get someone to dog sit for you in another location. Fourthly, do not use a speakerphone if you're the moderator, and encourage those participating in the conference call not to use a speakerphone. Another rule of thumb, and these are housekeeping details before we get to how to help you become a better moderator, try not to shuffle papers. Those of you who may listen to the Rush Limbaugh radio show, Rush uses paper shuffling as a technique and a strategy to get your attention or to make you think he's going through research and looking at papers on his desk. Frankly, it's very distracting if you're doing, as a moderator, a conference call with 10 or so people who are on the line. You heard that beep? You want to be sure you turn off any pager or cell phone you may have, because those beeps will be picked up by whatever you're doing. Next, I had mentioned that you really want to be in a quiet place. Try to avoid multitasking. Very often when you're hosting as a moderator a conference call, you can hear people in the background who are working on their typewriter, I guess they don't make typewriters anymore, who are working on their computer, maybe their iPad. You want to be sure that you, as the moderator, and folks who are on the line with you, are not multitasking. Now let's talk a little bit about how you can become a more effective moderator. I'm not going to be able to turn any of us into the Jay Leno or David Letterman of the worlds, but I can pass on some tips that may make you more effective in what you're doing. Tip number 1, use your voice. I know it's the obvious, and sometimes it doesn't hurt to state the obvious, but when you're moderating a conference call, a teleconnection, you're not getting feedback from those who are participating. They can't see you, you can't see them, and they're not going to be able to see any cues that we give ordinarily when we talk. You can see me move my hands, move my head, raise and lower your voice as the way to emphasize what you're doing. Use voice inflection. And in preparing to be a moderator, it wouldn't hurt to listen to some radio talk shows. Don't get involved in the substance of the shows, but listen to what the hosts do to attract your attention. Rush Limbaugh would be a good example. Listen to him, and again, don't get wrapped up in what the focus of the show is, but listen to how Rush uses inflection, how he uses his voice, how he pauses, how he sometimes will raise his voice or then speak quietly as a way to get your attention. You can get all of that and more just by listening to those who are the best of the talk show hosts across the country. Secondly, you have to rehearse. You have to practice this. And what you might do is rope some of your coworkers if you're a moderator who works in an office, maybe a spouse, maybe a loved one, maybe your kids. Use them as a sounding board when you practice using inflection. Tell them what you're doing. Say, look, I'm going to be moderating some conference calls and I need to practice using my voice. Some of you may remember the old FedEx ads where the guy spoke very fast about what he was saying and he spoke faster than most of us can understand. Well, the fact is, and my son Justin used to tell me this, he'd say, Dad, you talk faster than I can hear. That's a fact of life. We often, when we're using a telephone and don't have the visual cues, speak faster than people can hear and comprehend. So you might want to slow down just a little bit. I'm not asking you to really slow down, but I'm asking you to speak at a comfortable pace. And that's something you might also practice with coworkers, family, friends, or grandkids. The other thing to remember is you need to enunciate. There may be words that you stumble on. If you can be aware of that and try to work on that before you do the conference call, that's fine. You don't have to worry about verbalizing your pauses. What do I mean by that? A lot of us have a habit of saying, why do we say it? Because we're thinking of the next thing to say. And as you do more moderating, as you have more experience, either as a moderator or maybe you become the next great talk show host, you'll learn that silence is okay as long as it doesn't stretch out too long. So don't get hung up on worrying about your uhs and ums, but be aware that if it's a habit, it's something that you may want to work on over time. Some of the other techniques you might consider as a moderator is be aware that you're going to be talking with people who can't see each other. So a technique that's very helpful is to introduce yourself and reintroduce yourself. If you listen to talk radio, that's what talk show hosts do. Hi, I'm Ron Aaron. And they'll say it several times during the course of a show. Your voice may sound very much like other voices on that conference call. So when you reintroduce yourself, people then begin to establish who you are and what your voice is. Hi, I'm Ron Aaron. Delighted to have you on the conference call as a way to begin the introductions. And then ask people as they come online, if you have experience with conference calls, ordinarily there's a little beep that tells you someone's come on the line, or a chime, or whatever the sound may be with the service you're using. Ask people when they come on, would you mind introducing yourself? And as people come on, they will do that. And then when you get to the point of beginning the formal program, it wouldn't hurt to go through and ask everyone one at a time to introduce themselves. Now, if you've kept notes, and remember, people won't see you jotting this down, which is fine, you might say, Robert, would you mind introducing yourself again? Jane, nice to have you here. Bobby, would you mind? Sarah, would you mind? Jose, that would be great. Miguel, would you mind? That way each one has the confidence of knowing you know who they are and they're comfortable introducing themselves. You know, I mentioned earlier that we were going to talk a little bit about how to prevent distractions that may be occurring during your teleconference. If you hear somebody typing, taking a phone call, drinking a ton of water, or being somewhat disruptive, not intentionally, but that's what you're hearing, the easiest thing to do is to be direct and say, I'm not sure who this is, but I'm hearing some extraneous noise, typing, whatever it may be. Very often that will get them to stop. And then one final point, and it's all about smiling. When you smile, your voice smiles. And as you listen to talk show hosts, that's one of the things I'd like you to pick up. Their smiling, warm, comforting voice. And you can do that. It just takes practice. I would suggest you practice in front of a mirror. Hi, I'm Ron Aaron. Smiling in front of a mirror will teach you to do that. Now I want to share with you some additional tips on how to host a teleconference. It's really no different than if you've ever hosted a meeting or if you've ever written a report. What these programs revolve around is an introduction. We're going to tell you what we're going to do, and we've got a guest speaker who will be talking about issues involving caregivers. We then present the body of the program, which is very often the guest speaker's presentation. And then we have a Q&A, question and answer, with people who are on the line. And then we have a wrap-up and a conclusion. And at the very end, please remember to thank everyone who participated and tell them the date and time and topic for the next caregiver teleconference so that people are aware of what you're doing. All of these tips should make for a much better experience for those who are participating in this teleconference. Let me share a couple of final tips with you that are important whether you're a radio talk show host, whether you're Jay Leno, David Letterman, or Arsenio Hall. Some of you may remember him as a talk show host many years ago. One is keep the conversation rolling on topic. You may have a caller who begins to monopolize and dominate the conversation. Your job as moderator is to very politely say, Joe, those are very interesting points you're making, but we need to move on now. Or, Joe, that's something we'd love to discuss with you at another time. A way in which you can gently interrupt someone and get on with the conversation. And then finally, practice makes perfect. The more you rehearse as a moderator, the more familiar you are with the topic, the more prepared you are to introduce your guest speaker with a bio that's been prepared for you, the more general the opening questions are that you may present to the doctor. Tell me, Dr. Johnston, why is it that so many patients struggle with diabetes? As a general opening question, all of that makes your guest feel comfortable and gets all of your participants involved. Now, on behalf of the Alamo Caregiver Teleconnection and its staff, I'm delighted to have had this opportunity to talk with you a little bit about how to become a better moderator. My name is Ron Aaron, and I've enjoyed this opportunity to talk with you.